So after reviewing dozens of Claude skills on multiple marketplaces, I realized that almost everyone is falling into the same 3 traps. People install a bunch of skills, get a crap output, and assume that it's the skills that aren't working. But the skills absolutely work, but the 3 mistakes you're making do compound. And that's exactly why your agent feels inconsistent, it feels generic, and probably a little bit unpredictable. And you're not going to be able to build great agentic systems until you recognize these traps. So in this video, I'll break down each trap, why it quietly kills your output quality, and the 5-minute fix for every mistake. So let's start with the one almost everyone is making right now, which is actually just called the hoarding trap. Installing absolutely everything. I've noticed there's a trend where people are sharing their ultimate skills setups, and I see often 50, 100, 200 sometimes skills installed, and it looks impressive, and everyone's like, wow, I need to install all these skills. But here's what's actually happening under the hood when you do that. So Claude has a 15,000 character budget for the skills list in its system prompt. So all the names and descriptions combined, what we call the YAML front matter, those are fed into the system prompt. So say you've got 1,000 skills installed, that means all of those names and descriptions are fed into that. Now think about that. That means the more skills you have installed, the noisier the menu that Claude can try and pick the skill from. So Claude has to pick the right one based on a 1 or 2 line description. And if you have, say, 200 generic skills, you're probably going to have some crossover. So you might have 3 different SEO skills, 4 different copywriting skills, and this leads to ambiguity. And what happens if you try to run your SEO audit, for example, 2 days in a row, and it's using a separate set of skills on each day. Now, installing these might be unintentional. You might think it's not harmful, but you're literally making your agent less smart by installing more. And if you've got it installed globally, you might not even be able to see what your agent has access to and the skills that are loaded into the system prompt. So thankfully, the fix is super simple. Unless you're using a specific skill all the time and you understand why you're using it, start from scratch. I'd highly recommend building out a curated list of 20 to 30 well-built skills that are specific to your workflows only. So you should audit now what you've got if you've not done this. And if you can't explain when Claude should use one skill versus another, then delete one of them, because actually the less noise, the better. Claude is then going to be able to pick better and produce better output quality. So if you're guilty of installing a library of, say, 20 marketing skills, it's probably time to remove them and build them from the ground up. Now, that's not to say we're not going to install other people's skills, but it brings us nicely onto the second one, which is more sneaky because it feels like you're doing the right thing when you're not. But before we move on to the next one, I just wanted to quickly mention our agentic community linked down in the description below. We've built out a curated set of skills that we're building on top of for all types of businesses, as well as a from zero Claude code course that we've just released. So check it down below if you're interested. So you're out there searching for skills on GitHub or Skills MP, any of those skills marketplaces, and maybe you find something great like Corey Haynes' copywriting skill, or an SEO audit, or a content writer, and you install it and you run it, and the output is just fine. It's generic and it's competent, but it's like we're dealing with ChatGPT 3.5 again. And the reason for that is because it's missing something absolutely crucial, which is the contextual references to your business. So when you're installing from a marketplace, you're effectively taking somebody else's skill that's built for them. It's either built for them or optimized for the general public. It doesn't know your brand voice. It doesn't know your audience. It doesn't know how you position things. It doesn't have examples of your previous context, as well as what your customers actually say about you. So installing a skill like this is like hiring a consultant who's never been briefed on your business. They'll give you those textbook answers, which are competent, of course, but entirely forgettable. It doesn't have your brand stamp on it. And the whole point of skills is to contextualize them to your use case, in which you provide loads of context when you type a prompt into ChatGPT or Gemini. The skill is just the starting point for you to build on top of. So when you install a skill, try installing it locally next time using the -- local flag. Read through the files, understand the skill.md, and understand the reference files where this skill should actually be tailored to your business. So maybe in the references, you can add a brand voice document or some example posts you've actually published before, some banned words you've never used. And that is how you get a genuinely customized experience rather than something out of the box from a Claude code skill. And remember that the value isn't necessarily in the skill.md, it's in the reference files you add around it. So the skill.md is just our process document, our step-by-step instructions for Claude on how to take some action, but the reference files are actually what gives it context to your business. So I'd highly recommend with every skill you install, spend 15 minutes customizing it, add a reference file with your brand context, and drop in 3 to 5 examples of what you actually like the output to look like. Then all you need to do is update the skill.md to say, refer to my brand references or brand voice before you write anything. And that's it. It's going to take 15 minutes and turn a generic skill into your skill that's suitable for your business. You can, of course, customize these for clients too. Okay, and the last one, and this is the one that even experienced skill builders are missing, because it's about how the skill is built, not what's inside it. So you've customized your skills, you've added your brand context, your examples, your rules, but you've put all of it inside the skill.md file. One massive document, including process steps, brand guidelines, examples, scoring sheets, everything. And it feels right, everything in one place. It's super easy to find. You think it's easy to modify. But this is actually quietly killing your output quality, and you probably can't see why. Now, there's a reason people are building like this, because actually in the spec, a skill only needs the skill.md file. So it makes it sense to be like, okay, I'll just put everything in there. References, scripts, and everything else are optional. So technically a single file skill is the correct way. It just misses the entire point of why it was built in a certain way by Anthropic to have this architecture where we have the skill.md file with the process, the YAML front matter with what's loaded into context, and then any additional files referenced in the skill.md that bring context and knowledge to that process. And there are a few reasons why people default to doing this, because predominantly it's what they see first. So marketplaces like Skills MP display the skill.md content. So when people are browsing, they're only going to see what's in that file. They don't necessarily open the other files. So everyone puts everything on the front page so people can see the capability, and people think longer context equals better context, but that's just not true. And then other people browse those, they copy, and they learn from those. So they never see the folder structure behind the well-built ones, because the marketplace tends to flatten it in one screen. Not only that, but most tutorials when they're teaching how to build skills stop at the skill.md file. So even the getting started guides from Anthropic show you how to write a skill.md and call it done. They don't necessarily include the context to build all the reference files. Those references, scripts, and assets are treated like an advanced layer, when really it should be the default for anything serious, anything where you want a good quality output. And if you think about how people are generating skills, a huge chunk of those 280,000 plus skills on Skills MP are auto-generated. They're batch created by LLMs. And if they're doing that, it's way easier to just generate one file than a proper folder structure with curated reference docs. But here's the actual problem with this. It might seem okay on the surface, but let's think about how Claude Code actually references these documents, which is called progressive disclosure. So it starts with the YAML front matter. If it needs the skill, it will load up the skill ND, which should be our process document. And then that process document should actually relate to the additional context. But if Claude is loading in the entire skill.md every time, and you've got a 1,000 word skill.md and Claude only needs 200 lines of it, you're basically passing in those tokens on every single run and eating up context, which is going to cost you more. But that's not the only cost you face. When everything is in one file, you actually can't iterate properly. If the output's wrong, you don't know whether it's a process problem and you need to fix the skill.md, or a knowledge problem and you need to fix or add to the reference files. So you're just staring at one giant wall of text trying to figure out where to fix, like one giant prompt. And I'm going to use a real example here. Check out this skill, which I've anonymized. There's way too much context crammed into the skill.md file. You can see here, we've got context information mixed with all of the different process steps. So when the output eventually fails for this, like where do you even start to fix this? And then let's compare that to a properly structured skill with the skill.md references or scripts files. We've got references here, which are only used and only loaded into context when absolutely necessary. So not only does it save the context window, it makes it easier to debug and also understand the context when we're reading through and installing these. So the fix here is actually relatively simple. It's understand how to build these out from the ground up before you go out and install a bunch. So separate your process from your context. So your skill.md should be just a step-by-step, what Claude is going to do and in what order. Everything else, like your brand voice, examples, rules, scoring criteria, into reference files that the skill.md is going to point to use at the right time. And that's it. So quick recap, we had 3 traps: hoarding skills instead of curating them from the ground up, copy pasting without actually adding your reference files and making them personalized to you, and cramming everything else into one skill.md file instead of using the structure that actually lets you iterate. So the best skill setup isn't the biggest, it's the one where every skill is personalized to your business and built so that you can improve it and maintain it. If you want to see exactly how to build skills from scratch, the full framework, the folder structure, the iteration process, I did a deep dive on that right here. So see you in the next one.